So 32,000 years ago, an ice age squirrel dug a burrow deep in the frozen ground of Siberia and packed it full of seeds and dried fruit to eat later. And those seeds just sat there, frozen in the permafrost for 32,000 years. Through the entire ice age, through the extinction of woolly mammoths, through the rise and fall of every human civilization that has ever existed, just sitting in the dark, in the frozen ground, completely preserved. In 2012, Russian scientists grew one of those fruits back into a living, flowering plant. Hello, I'm Danielle. I'm a snowflake preservation artist out of Colorado. I spend my days preserving something that lasts about 30 seconds before it disappears forever. So when I tell you that ice preserved a living flower for 32,000 years and scientists brought it back to life, you can understand why I lost my mind and it has become my favorite story. A team of Russian scientists from the Academy of Sciences was excavating northeastern Siberia. And deep in the permafrost, between 20 and 40 meters underground, they found something extraordinary. Ancient Arctic ground squirrel burrows, perfectly preserved in the ice. These weren't just empty holes. They were stuffed. Some of the storage chambers contained up to 800,000 seeds and fruits, a squirrel's entire winter pantry frozen in time. The deposits were permanently frozen at -7 degrees Celsius and had never thawed, not once. Researchers confirmed this by the presence of vertical ice wedged running through the permafrost. If ground had ever melted and refrozen, those structures would not exist. This ice had been completely undisturbed since the squirrel packed its burrow away. Now, the scientists' first instinct was to try to germinate the seeds directly, which sounds straightforward. Just plant them and see what happens. Unfortunately, it didn't work. The mature seeds had been too damaged by 32,000 years underground to sprout on their own. But then the researchers noticed something. Some of the fruits they found were immature. The soft tissue connects the seeds to the fruit wall was still intact, a source of genetic material. So they switched strategies entirely, growing the tissues in a controlled lab. They take tiny fragments of the plant tissue and encourage them to multiply and develop. They were able to coax that 32,000-year-old tissue into producing shoots. Those shoots grew roots, and the roots were transplanted into soil. The plants grew, and then they bloomed. The plant is called Silena stylophylla, commonly known as narrow-leaved companion. It's a small flowering plant with delicate white petals that still grows in Siberia today. The ancient version looked almost identical to the modern one. When the flowers opened, researchers noticed the petals of the ancient plant were slightly more spaced apart, a little wider, a little more open than the modern version. The differences make scientists believe this could be a lost ice age phenotype, a version of the plant that was adapted to the extreme cold and dry conditions and has since disappeared as the climate changed over thousands of years. We were looking at a flower that no longer existed anywhere on Earth, except now in a lab in Russia. Then the plant set seeds. The scientists pollinated them by hand since this particular species needs cross-fertilization to reproduce. And those ancient seeds germinated at 100%. Which is actually better than the modern version of the same plant, which germinates at 86 to 90%. A flower that last bloomed during the Ice Age just outperformed its modern descendants. The previous record, oldest plant ever revived, a Judean date palm grown from a 2,000-year-old seed found in Israel. This blew it out of the water by 30,000 years. And here's what gets me about this, beyond just the wow factor. The discovery changed the way scientists think about permafrost entirely. What used to be considered frozen dirt is now understood to be something closer to a library, a natural cryopreservation system storing ancient genetic material on a scale we are only beginning to understand. The same permafrost deposits that hold these squirrel burrows also contain woolly mammoth remains, ancient bacteria, and prehistoric viruses. We could take a look and I'm sure see pollen records going back hundreds and thousands of years, and now we know that they contain viable plant tissue, living material just waiting. The researchers pointed out that similar ancient squirrel burrows have been found not just in Siberia, but across Alaska and the Yukon. The ancient land bridge between Asia and North America may hold an enormous underground library of plant species that we thought were gone, that we've never seen, things that disappeared from the surface of the earth tens of thousands of years ago, quietly preserved in the frozen ground below. One squirrel, an accidental archivist, 32,000 years. Think about this a lot in the context of what I do. Every snowflake I preserve, I'm essentially doing what the permafrost did. Something that would have disappeared in seconds gets held intact, so it can be seen and understood later. The structure is kept, the moment is kept. What moves me most about this story is that the ice didn't just preserve the seed, it preserved the information inside the seed, the genetic instructions for building a flower that hadn't existed on the earth for years. Everything that made the plant that plant, held perfectly in frozen ground. Ice doesn't just freeze things, it remembers them. And sometimes when the conditions are just right, it gives them back. I'm Danielle. I preserve real snowflakes. If you want to see the work, you can find me at PreservedSnowflakeCO or on Etsy at PreservedSnowflakeCO. I'll see you in the next one.